I really enjoy success stories, so I brought the S550 in here. When I'd hit like a rut in the road, I could actually feel the rear end move a little bit. And you could see the car would want to kind of steer a little bit. And I thought, okay, I've got something loose there in the back. Some bushing, some suspension part is loose because sure enough, you go down the road, you hit a rut, and you feel that jerk. Maybe some of you have felt that in your own car. And it's particularly prominent with these Mercedes because they have these multi-link rear suspensions. And with all that rubber isolation from the road, it makes the car so quiet and smooth. But there is a price to pay, particularly when they approach 100,000 miles. I took this S550, I changed the rear struts, and while I had the struts out, I replaced those hidden outer control arm bushings. And you can't believe the difference. Just did this trip up into the mountains, and the whole suspension has that much firmer ride. I'm really happy with this car now. And I also came up with, of course, another special tool to replace those outer rear control arm bushings. I believe if you have one of these aromatic cars and you're replacing the rear struts, those bushings should be replaced. I call it the hidden bushing because it's on the outer end of the control arm, and you don't see it, you don't get to inspect it, you can't feel its looseness until you actually drop the control arm, and you have to do that to replace these very long struts. But I want to take you underneath the car now, and I'm going to show you these bushings, and I'm going to show you why I decided to replace them, and then I'm going to show you what's required to replace them. I don't like what I'm seeing here. When I drop this rear control arm, and you have to do that in order to remove and replace this long strut. This is what I don't like. I'm getting a lot of movement right here. Right here, there's a very critical bushing. And it hardly ever gets changed because you can't really see it or test it when the control arm is hooked up. You literally have to remove or drop the control arm to inspect this bushing. And I've called it the hidden bushing in the past, and it's something I highly recommend you replace on the ABC suspension cars because this bushing really gets abused with the hydraulics in the rear end. This is what the bushing looks like. And this bushing was used on almost every Mercedes from the mid-1990s on up. You can see I'm not getting a lot of slop, but I'm getting a lot of flex and movement in here. And I feel at 100,000 miles, this is something that should be replaced. And now's the time to do it because I've gone to all the work to drop the control arm to replace these aromatic struts. So I'm going to pull this bolt out. I have a press tool that does work on the ABC suspension, but I'm not sure whether it's going to work here because of the restricted space on this backing plate behind the rear brake disc. Take a close look at this. If you came across this in your own repair work, you would be looking at this going, what in the world? How am I going to get this out of here? That's a hard press interference fit. You can't start hammering on this. This is all a cast aluminum part, so you can't get in here with a big punch and start hammering it. Plus trying to hammer the bushing back in, you're going to destroy it. There's where it sits right there. Here's the press tool that I made to get this bushing out of the ABC suspension. But the bushings on the end of the control arm, which makes it easy to access. I'm looking at the restricted area here and the angle here and thinking, is this going to work? Well, let's see. I think I'll try to push it out this way. So I'm going to put this piece here because I'm going to take a bolt and tighten a bolt to draw that bushing out. Then this is the end I'm going to put in here to push the bushing out. So let's see if we have enough space here to get this bushing out. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is get this piece in here. Fortunately, you can bend the bushing a little bit. And I'll put this spacer in there. Okay, and then I can straighten it out. Okay, that's looking good. Now I can place this piece. Notice it's big enough that will allow the bushing to come out and go inside that piece. I just barely have enough space. But I think this is going to work. Now I'll get a couple of wrenches and I'll start tightening this bolt down. And by tightening the bolt down, it's going to pull the bushing right out into this housing here. You can see how much force I have to use. We got right down there to where it was up at the edge, and man, it was stuck. I like coil oil, but you need a real thin lubricant. You need to spray on each side so it wicks in. When you're doing this, you can hear it squeak. Hear it squeak? If you can hear it squeak, that means you're doing okay. It's coming out. Hopefully I can make it out without having to add more. Okay, there, see, I bottomed out on the threads. When I'm this far out, rather than take this off and add more spacers, I could probably just take a hammer and tap it the rest of the way out. You better believe they can be tough to get out. I ended up having to make some modifications in my tool for this W221. Now, if you look what I've done here, this part was the original part I cut. And I put it on this side. I put the bushing over here, and because of the interference here, I had to reduce the size of the spacer, pushing the new bushing in right here. And that's what I'm going to do in my new kit. I'm going to provide a couple of different types of spacers, because you may run into a situation where you need to change something. And that's what we had to do this morning. We worked on this for over 3 hours, trying to come up with the right combination to put these bushings in. And the first one, we got it cocked in at an angle, and the only way we could get it back out to straighten it out was to come up with another tool to push it out so you wouldn't damage it. Now you see you've got the ring showing right there, just that little snap ring, and that shows you we've got it in the right position. And you can see here, you say, well, how am I going to get that bolt out? Well, fortunately, the bushing pivots internally, so you can twist it like that and pull the bolt out and get the spacer. There it is. The new bushing is in, and we're ready to reinstall the lower control arm. This gives you an idea how the bushing fits on over the bolt. And this spacer, which is used to force the bushing in, has to rest on the outer housing. You can't push it in here or you'll damage the bushing. So this is a tight fit going right on over the top. A nut here, you just start tightening this down, and as you tighten this down, you can see it just pushes it right into the control arm. The job was a success. We now have 2 brand new outer control arm bushings installed in this S550. I thought I'd show you the difference after installing that new control arm bushing. I've got the control arm on there. I snug the bolt down so you can see. Notice it's not just falling down anymore. And if you see, it's much tighter here, and its rock is real solid here. So this is a real improvement over that old worn out bushing.